Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our special podcast, The Best and Worst Games of 2016. I'm your host, Richard Billy Jr., and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Gary A. Swaby. How's it going, Gary?
It's going good. I'm excited for this show. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. We're also joined by Mr. Max Muller. How's it going, Max?
Pretty good. Excited to hear everyone's game of the year and everything.
Yes. Also joined by Mr. Jake James Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to argue. Best and worst. It's time. Let's get that apple pie privileges ready.
Absolutely. We have a special guest tonight from the Throwdown, Mr. Carlos Romero. I hope I said your name correctly.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome.
Glad to talk with you guys.
Awesome. Yes, glad to have you. Just to let everybody know how we're going to do this format, we're all going to talk about one game that we enjoyed in 2016 and one game that we disliked. And we'll also have discussions in between this particular conversation. But that's pretty much how we're going to do it. Keep it very simple, straight to the point. We'll also have a couple of honorable mentions in there as well. But I'm going to put you on the spot, Carlos, and let you go first. You know, as a first-time guest, I'm going to let you go ahead and you let us know which game you enjoyed the most in 2016.
Ooh, so it was between two games, really. And I'm not going to mention the game that didn't make it because that's going to be part of the honorable mentions. So the game that actually did make it was Inside. Inside, the same people who made Limbo is an indie game. That game, I liked. Well, first of all, because it's unique. You know, it's one of those new games, new IPs. It's not like any retread like sequel. And the game was just good. Like, it was a fun puzzle game. It was short. It was concise. It was scary to a point. It's not like a horror game, but the setting that it's in, the way that the narrative goes through on that, like the side scroller, it's just like, it's really tense and scary. You're like really thinking about what the game, like what it's presenting to you, what that world is. And it had one of the best final levels to a game. It's something that completely throws you off a loop, and it's something that no one expects. And yeah, Inside, it's probably it is my game of the year for this year for sure.
Hey, well, I just definitely want to comment and say, yeah, I definitely do agree a lot of what you said about the game. You know, I know one thing in particular that I did like about the game. There was virtually no information about this game before it came out. All we knew is Playdead's been working on another game, but knew nothing about it. And then when it came out, you know, because it was a game that I jumped into, and I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome.
You know, it's funny, like some people who've played it would argue to say, even after I played it, I still don't know anything about it.
Yep.
I hear so many good things about it that I've wanted to play it for a while. I hear a lot of people say a lot of great things about Inside.
Yeah, same.
It's one of those games that you really get this. It doesn't tell you the story. You get it from the backgrounds. You get it from the things you interact with. So it's one of those things you have to think about, really, and it's open-ended. It doesn't really, the ending doesn't really conclude anything. It's kind of like make your own ending, like whatever you think it's going to be. So that's one of the negatives to the game that a lot of people talk about. But other than that, to me it's pretty flawless. The mechanics, the puzzles, everything is just really like top-notch for that game.
Yeah, it seems like one of those games that's just like hard to explain why it's so good, but you just have to play it to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Okay, would you say like the experience that you got from playing Inside, is it very comparable to like what a lot of people said when they played Journey? Because I've seen the comparison kind of like, you know, put together, like the juxtaposition between those two games, even though they're nothing alike in their own retrospects, but the same type of way where it's like a really good experience that just, you know, it's very indescribable. Like what you feel when you're going through that game is the same way that I've seen people compare that to Journey.
Yeah, it's really comparable. Journey. It's actually something that really brought me back, like what I started thinking about when playing this game. And it's nothing like it. The mechanics, nothing is like it is the original BioShock. It's just the world that you're thrown into, like the way, like you just have so many questions when you go through the world, and it's really well set up, and it's but yeah, like Journey is one of those games. What else is Limbo? Definitely, it's the same people who made Limbo. So if you like Limbo a lot, then you're really gonna enjoy this game.
Hey, I definitely agree. I'll just say right now, I'm not going to say what my pick was, but that game was very close to being one of my picks. But well, I'll get into that later. But also now, just let us know which game you were disappointed by as well.
Oof. So this one became between two, but one I really disliked it more because of the hype. Well, both of them were super hyped games. But one just took the cake, man, and that was No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky, I don't know if this is going to be a consensus or anything between everyone here, but No Man's Sky had so much promise. And I understand that a lot of people said that the hype was created by us mostly, and that's partly true. Like, we're part to blame for why this game didn't meet our expectations, but still, there was a lot of lies told when the people were advertising this game. And not only that, the game to me was pretty bland. It was like, this is like an analogy to me, or something that like I compared it to. No Man's Sky is the equivalent of, is like the macro version of the probing missions in Mass Effect 2. Like, if you guys know, like in Mass Effect 2, you just go to planets and you're just probing things. Like, and it's like the dumbest thing you could do. That's pretty much No Man's Sky, but within the planet. And there's no. Oh, you're gonna say something? Sorry.
I was just saying that's hilarious.
It's
man,
true,
like,
though. It's true. It's a great comparison.
It's so bland. Like I give them some kudos because it was a small team, and what they were trying to do, the procedural generation of the planets and everything in the world was really, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but it was something that wasn't done before, or wasn't done to this like popularity before. And but it was so bad. Like, there was no reason why this game got so hyped. Like, Sony, when they showed this game, I think it was an E3, not expecting anything, just one of the indie titles, and people just loved it. They ran away with it and started advertising the hell out of this game. So there are so many issues with that game. Partly was because of us, mostly was because of the developers that lied to us. And yeah, it was just the cluster F of things that went wrong with that game. But people are saying that it's better now, that there's space combat and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not gonna give it a second chance. I already did. I already gave it a big first chance, and it failed for me.
Oh, well, I'll just say I know Gary is very disappointed because he told me that this was one game he was looking forward to this year more than Final Fantasy, and I was surprised when he said that. I had to take a double take when he said that.
Wait, what you been drinking today, man?
Hey, listen, it's far out there, but we, like I always said, we said on the co-op multiple times. Sean Murray is a good guy, but obviously, the studio, they got it in over their head with the expectations of this title. I hope that something comes from this. But I would say overall, great picks, man. Both the thumbs up and the thumbs down as far as the good game and the bad game. So excellent picks.
Yeah, and just to send off No Man's Sky into oblivion, like what came into my mind, like working in the tech world, like it's kind of like when you're working on a project and there's something called requirements. Requirements are something that the customer gives you in order to, you have to fulfill these requirements in order to create or complete the system that the customer wants. And it seems like No Man's Sky was just an endless amount of an addition of requirements. Like, it kept getting requirements on and on, and they just kept saying yes, yes, it's gonna have this, it's gonna have this, it's gonna have this. You can meet people, and it's kind of BS. It's like I think it was Sean Murray. One of those people said, yeah, the universe is too expansive to even see each other. And I'm like, yeah, I can agree with that if you put it in terms to our universe. But the whole point of that video game is to get to the center of the universe. So if everyone's goal is to get to the center of the universe, and you say no one's ever going to see each other, it's kind of bullshit. Like, yeah, but that's my 2 cents on No Man's Sky.
I agree, 100%. Yes. I still haven't played the game. I do have it for some odd reason, but you know, I don't know. But yeah, once again, great picks. So who would like to go next? How about you, Mr. Lugo? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. I got 2 good ones. Yeah,
okay.
That should spark some fun discussion.
It's time.
So it's time. Yeah, it's definitely time. About to take away this apple pie privilege. So the first game, the best game for me of 2016 right now, again, the game that I really had a lot of fun with, which is very hard because there was a lot of phenomenal games that came out this year. Like, there is a huge amount of games that came out that were actually really good, and they all deserve props, and they all deserve your time and your money, on top of that, in order to play them, because I think they were phenomenal. But the game that really stood out to me, and I think is still the best game of this year, is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And the reason why I picked that one, over games like Doom, over games like Overwatch, over games like Inside being one that I didn't play yet, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself for not being able to, because I hear so many great things about it. But speaking on the games that I have played, Uncharted 4 was the one that not only kind of gave me the most satisfaction to complete and the most satisfaction to kind of finish straight to the end, not only because of the buildup of 3 previous games from Naughty Dog, which, again, phenomenal developer of the Uncharted series, Last of Us 2 incoming down the line, has a real great pedigree of games behind under their belt, in their portfolio. And I felt like Uncharted 4, again, is another example of just how good of a developer they are, telling a fun story, an interesting story that kept me engaged throughout the entire time I was playing it. Again, all the different mechanics from the game, build up from the previous 3 Uncharted games. While it's not a perfect game, I don't think any game in its core is truly perfect, with maybe the exception of the original Super Mario Brothers. And again, even that's debatable and stuff. It's still a phenomenal game, a phenomenally made, crafted, well-designed game that if you own a PlayStation 4, you have to play it. I think that you need to play the entire Uncharted series, but specifically for PlayStation 4, you need to play Uncharted 4, because that is a seminal game that I feel like people are still going to be talking about that down the line, in the same way that they talk about The Last of Us in relation to the PlayStation 3. And again, even with the rest of the Uncharted games, such a phenomenal game, such a great game that you need to play at this moment. Now, the one I really want to talk about is the worst game, okay? The one that was disappointing, and probably the worst game of 2016. Now, ironically and funny enough, while I agree with a lot of sentiments that Chris had about No Man's Sky, I don't think it was the worst game of this year, okay? And the reason being is because I know of one that's far worse than No Man's Sky, that was poorly designed, poorly planned out, poorly presented, ran horribly on every platform that it was on. It was absolutely ridiculous how this game was even released, in my opinion. And that game was Umbrella Corps. And this is obvious, Rich. I mean, we've talked about this when I previewed it, when I played it. I saw this at New York Comic Con. I have a history that I've followed that game, and all the way up through its release. I reviewed it on the site. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go check out my review of Umbrella Corps that I have now on the Koalition. And it pretty much sums up the bulk of my gripes with that game. But to sum it up in a nutshell, that game is just a poorly designed game. It's just like one of those things is that you have to question, how did this get released? It works terrible online, like it's completely broken online. The single player is almost non-existent because it tries to do that thing where it recycles a lot of the elements that you find in the multiplayer and try to implement it into the single player and actually make a quote-unquote story out of it, or a campaign or a narrative out of it. And it just fails on all cylinders. And it's really terrible that the Resident Evil franchise fell that low. Granted, it's a spin-off game from the series. It's not a canon Resident Evil series. But like even Operation Raccoon City, I felt was a little bit better handled and had more Resident Evil injected into it than what Umbrella Corps did. Umbrella Corps, if you didn't know, was supposed to be Capcom's kind of like version of like an esports type of game, competitive multiplayer style game where it had a lot of game modes that involved objective-based game modes, for multiplayer, as well as also search and destroy stuff a la Call of Duty. But it just was not well designed. It was broken, buggy, glitchy, terribly designed. I had a few issues even with my save data at one point. The game crashed on me at some point down the line after I posted my review. And it's just not fun to play. So to kind of bring it back around, at least No Man's Sky was a playable game in some fashion, in some form, for some people that were out there that might still be enjoying it even now. Umbrella Corps is just a bad game. It's just a terrible game that nobody should have had to waste their time and effort on. So those are my two picks for the best and worst of 2016, but I'll talk about honorable mentions later. So kick it back to you, Rich.
Awesome. And let me just say real quick, Umbrella Corps, I did see footage of that game absolutely looked horrible. So at least, they had the right mindset of trying to make a survival horror game because the horror element was there in terms of the finished product, but everything else just absolutely terrible. And one thing I will say about Uncharted, I agree with that pick as well. It was a great game. Now, there was one criticism about the game that I think a lot of us, we had a discussion about this after the fact, is that I don't like that they go back to when Nathan Drake was a kid, and you didn't know nothing about Sam. Now, obviously, this game they changed that whole dynamic, and now he did exist. But
well, they busted out two Ex Machinas on that one. Like, not only does the brother exist at all, because we played Uncharted 3 and he was never there, but he. Oh, this is spoilers. I don't know if I should say this.
No, I think it's safe. Spoilers are safe now. I think everybody had enough time. And none of that here. No, I think you're fine though.
The dude got shot and came back like he was supposed to die in the game, and then he came back, and I'm like, okay. Like, so that was like two Ex Machinas. But I will say, like, Naughty Dog, like, their video games have become comfort food now. Like, all their video games have been top notch, and Uncharted 4 is definitely one of my favorite games of the year. So even with those kinds of things like that I've nitpicked, it's still a great game.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. I feel like, again, even with all the little issues, like every game in of itself, even some of the most phenomenally timeless games that we played on all platforms are going to have their own issues. Again, even Super Mario Brothers being one of the best platformers to ever exist still has its issues there. But there are some games, including that one and including Uncharted 4, that are just so well designed, so well presented, and so well thought out in its own right that I think that they're must plays on the particular platform they're for. And I think Uncharted 4 is a must play on the PlayStation 4.
Agree 100%. Absolutely. All right, so great picks. Now I'm going to kick it over to Max. What are your picks for the best and worst game of 2016?
So for the longest time, I thought my game of the year was going to be Dark Souls 3, just because I love the Dark Souls series, and that one was like kind of a callback to the first game, and it made everything right that the second game kind of ruined. Then I played Dishonored 2, and I thought it was going to be Dishonored 2. But believe it or not, it's actually, this was a tough one. I've been thinking about this all day, but I think that my game of the year is actually Final Fantasy 15, now that I've gotten further into it, and I've played it I've never really played a Final Fantasy game, and this is my first one, so maybe that's why I have a lot of different opinions than a lot of people do on the game. But there's no other game this year that keeps me coming back to it almost every day, that I'm thinking about all the time, whose characters I've related to as well, and just characters that I've fallen in love with. I love driving the Regalia. I think the combat is brilliant. It really, really clicks with me, and there's so much variety to it. And I know also, to be fair, I haven't gotten to the part that everyone has been talking about is like the worst part, which is chapter 13 and everything. But I know that people say that it kind of turns into a different game, and that Final Fantasy 15 kind of tries too many things and tries to be all these different kind of games. But I kind of like that. I like doing all these different things with the same group of characters, kind of like how Mario can be in all these different games and do all these different things. I kind of like that Final Fantasy 15 tries all these different things. And no, not all of them are great, but I think it's a very ambitious game, and I think it's a game that a lot of other developers can learn from in some regards. But yeah, I'd have to say that's my pick. It was a long. I thought about that all day, but I think that's the one I'm deciding on is Final Fantasy 15.
I'm really surprised by that because I know you only recently just got into Final Fantasy games, so
yeah,
I really didn't expect you to pick it. So, but I've got tears of joy right now. So,
well, wait a second. Let me ask this question, Max. So now, does this mean that you will be like Gary and buy the game on PC when it comes out on PC?
I'm probably not going to do that. No.
No, he's going to be that guy that buys the season pass. That's what it is. The season pass.
I do want the season pass. I am going to be the guy that buys the season pass. But no, I'm really surprised I liked it as much as I did, to be honest. Like, I knew I would like it. I didn't really think I wouldn't like it, but I find myself, even with my brother, who's the only other person like I know in real life that plays games just as much as I do, I just bring it up around him all the time, and we talk about it all the time. And like, there was no other game this year that I really did that with at all. I didn't think it would be my game of the year, but it's settled for me. It's been about a month, almost a month since it came out, and I've played so much of it, and I'm still in love with it. I do have issues with it, but like JJ said, no game is perfect. And what? Sorry.
I was gonna say that game did the reverse Final Fantasy 13. So in Final Fantasy 13, when you played that game was just a linear game until like 20 hours in, when you got to this place called Grand Pulse, and then it just became an open world. And this one, it was the reverse. It's like an open world game, and then once you get to chapter 8 or 9 or something like that, it just becomes a linear game.
Yeah, that's the part I'm about to get into, actually.
I'm curious to see like what you think like when you finally do finish it, because I always kept saying to you and Gary, like I wanted to do a spoiler cast at one point where we really dissect it when we all finish it, because again, like a lot of people go through a lot of different mindsets when they finally get to different parts of that game, because every little thing that goes on, like especially the big stuff, makes you feel a little bit different. Like now, I'm still playing it even now, like doing a lot of the end game content well after I did the review and stuff. And I'm discovering little things here and there that I like or dislike and stuff that opens up the conversation about that game again. So I can totally understand why you think that's a good game and probably your best of this year. It's a good pick.
Yeah, it was a tough one, but yeah, like you guys said, I'm very excited to go through and finish the story after, because I keep hearing all these different things and I just really want to know what happens and what changes. And then I'd have to say my worst pick. To be fair, there weren't really many games I played this year that I didn't like. But no, my worst game of the year is Recore. Recore is a pretty shit game. It's a game that had all these brilliant ideas, if you ask me, and a lot of ideas that when you're first starting out the game, you're like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Can't wait to see what they do with this and that, like the combat and the exploration and everything. But then it just turns out to be a very, very hollow game. None of those ideas were capitalized on at all. Like, for example, the enemies, at first, they're like these weird kind of spidery robot things. And at first, you're like, oh, this is cool. I wonder what kind of robots they'll do, and like that you can fight with and everything. And they turn out to be the same, like kind of 5 core bots like throughout the entire game, and they're all introduced to you pretty early on. And there's a bestiary in it, and it's like, oh, there's 33 different types of enemy. No, the different types of enemy are all different color variations of the core 5 types of enemies, and those color variations only change like a status effect, like stun or you're on fire or something like that. And it's pretty dumb. And the combat, like, it only has one gun, and it gets really boring, and it drags on and on and on. And it's just a slow game. Like, you have to run across this open world, and it takes forever to get anywhere, and there's no reason for it at all. Like, there's no sprint button, there's no vehicles that would have really helped or anything. Like, honestly, imagine running across like Final Fantasy, but it's bland. There's nothing in the world except for like sand and rocks. All the enemies look the same, and you don't get any vehicles. You just run at your normal running speed. That's pretty much what Recore is. It's awful.
That's like the Division too.
Is it? I didn't play the Division, but yeah, it sucked, and I'm kind of sad about it. And from what I hear, I still haven't beaten it yet because it's just, I don't want to go back to it. From what I hear, they're setting up a whole franchise with it, and I'm like, great. They're all gonna suck too. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's my bad game of the year.
So you would say that this is a game that should be called Recrap
Yeah.
instead of Reform.
100%.
Yeah. I still have yet to play the game. I have avoided it on purpose because I saw what you said about it. I saw what Mr. Lugo said about it in his review as well. I said, you know what? I'm gonna wait till this game is dirt cheap, and I have nothing to play. Then I'll give it a shot.
I tried defending it, but like for a while when it came out, but I just played more and more of it. Yeah, it's just I remember before telling you it was worth a try. I don't think so anymore. Yeah. I don't even think it's worth a try anymore.
Well, allow me to say this, that I hope that Scalebound fares better.
Oh yeah.
I hope, but I don't know. We have to see what happens.
Yeah, we do.
But I will say this one last thing before I move on to Gary. I also haven't played a Final Fantasy game, and I have purposely been holding out on Final Fantasy 15 because there's so many other games that I'm involved with right now. So after hearing you talk about it, now I know I definitely need to play it.
Yeah,
I know pretty much everybody on this show, as well as Tony from the other show, talks so much about this game. I definitely want to play it, but because it is so massive, I'm gonna have to make time for that in terms of finishing out the other games and then going back to that. So, but definitely going to try it out.
That game, I heard people say it was like nothing they ever played before, and I didn't believe them. And then I played it. It is true. There is nothing quite like that game. It's pretty unreal, honestly.
Yeah, and the thing I love about the game as well is, like you said, Max, it tries a lot of new things, but it still maintains that Final Fantasy essence within it. Like, it doesn't lose that. So that's what I'm happy about.
Yeah, even the little things like the characters, like I fell in love with the characters. They're just like when you're different types of missions, when you're just walking, the things they say when you're walking or when you're fishing, it's like it's just those little things that add to the game.
And there's so much of those things, so many just throughout. Like I just discovered farming. Like what the hell? There's farming. I'm 30 hours in and I can farm now. Like what is this?
Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll definitely talk about it after I've had some time to play it as well. I will not make you guys a podcast special, unfortunately, because you guys are probably you're probably very close to finishing it. But we'll see what happens. Sounds good. Great picks. So, Gary, now it's your turn, and I'm preparing myself because you probably will say, "Yeah, Final Fantasy 15 again." But let's see if you could surprise me.
Okay, yeah. So my personal game of the year has to be Overwatch, and that's because like this game took me by surprise actually, because I remember hearing a lot of things about it. In particular, the controversy that happened with Tracer and her pose and everything. I remember that, but I really didn't know too much about this game. But around the time, because Destiny was like the last big FPS game that I spent a lot of hours in. And I was getting tired of that just because of like the business practices, and it was just a lot to keep up with and stuff. So I kind of dropped off from Destiny, but I wanted like a new go-to FPS kind of thing. So I decided to try Overwatch and review it. And, it's hard to explain unless you try it, but the concept of the game is so simple, and it seems so bare bones like when you describe it to people, but it's just so fun. Like the foundations of the game, they're just so fun. It just works. Like when you play the game, you just fall in love with it. Like the character designs, the world designs, the animations. And one of the things I love about the game is that it puts a big focus on team synergy. And I feel like that's something that's lost in a lot of FPS games, because a lot of FPS games are more about, it's all about the kills. Like you just got to go off and get the kills and be the hero, but with Overwatch, team synergy matters. You have to coordinate with the team. You have to understand each character's strengths and weaknesses. You have to understand tanks, offense characters, defense characters, and healers, and the different things that they can do. And everybody on the team has a responsibility. They have their place, within the team. And if you work together and coordinate well, then it means a victory. And I just find that like just so refreshing, because a lot of FPS games are just like it's just so focused on kill death ratio these days. And this brings me back to like the Quake days, back on the Dreamcast and everything. So yeah, I just love it. And this is the one game, like I hate DLC, I hate microtransactions and stuff like that, but this is the one game that has me buying loot boxes every time there's like a new seasonal event, just because there's always some sort of cosmetic design or character skin or whatever that I want to get. And yeah, competitive mode as well. Like there's nothing more exhilarating than being in a competitive game where it annoys me, but people are really fussy in these games, like the character you pick and everything, and you'll have people hurling abuse at you sometimes, but you just gotta have thick skin, and it's really satisfying to get a win. And it's just so intense, like going through those competitive matches and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Overwatch, it's one of those games that just dropped and it just took off. Like, like I don't think anyone expected it to be that big, especially for being just an online only shooter. Like, I don't think anybody would have expected it to blow up like that. And yeah, I got caught in the hype. What can I say? Like, I never expected to like the game this much. It's become a part of like my everyday life. Like, I'll play a couple of games of Overwatch each day, even if like I might not have much time for gaming, but usually I'll try and fit in at least 1 or 2 matches of Overwatch every day. So yeah, no game has really had that much of a lasting impression on me in a very long time. So that is my game of the year.
How close is that? I don't know if you played Team Fortress 2, but how close would you say those games are?
Yeah, they are really similar. I only briefly played Team Fortress 2, but when I played it, I did understand the appeal at the time, but I think I tried it like so late into its life cycle that it just didn't click for me. Because it already had like a real hardcore community and everything. So a lot of things just fell on deaf ears to me when I played it. But I guess because I was with Overwatch from the start, it just kind of absorbed me. What was you going to say, Max?
Team Fortress 2, there's a lot of elements in Overwatch that you'll see that are just straight out of Team Fortress 2. Like, for example, I think the character's name is Torbjorn. He has a turret that you build up like directly like the engineer. A lot of the abilities and different characters are kind of straight out of Team Fortress 2, but they also have their own abilities. But it never feels like it's not a direct clone. They are different enough. Overwatch has a different feeling to it. They can coexist happily in the same family. I guess a good way to put it would be like the newer Call of Duties and maybe Titanfall 1 before Call of Duty got too similar to Titanfall. If you can think of that comparison. But they can exist happily together. They're similar, but they're definitely not the same thing. Or Dota and League, I guess is a better way to put it. Dota 2 and League of Legends. They're like that.
And it's pretty interesting that, for example, Titanfall 1 got hit so much because it didn't have a single player. It was just online only. Yeah. But somehow Overwatch stuck and people are obsessed with that game.
Yeah. No, people did like talk about that, but I guess that it's so good that they looked past it.
You know what? I'm glad that you mentioned that, Carlos, because that's what I was going to say, and that was the reason why I initially avoided the game, because I did play Titanfall and I did play Evolve, and I reviewed both of those games on the site, and my complaint was that it's only multiplayer. There wasn't any other content, so I didn't feel like I wanted to come back to it. But this game, it's definitely the personality, because even when I played the demo, I was impressed with the demo when they had a demo for Overwatch. But I still was hesitant because of playing those other multiplayer only games. So you know, it's. I'm glad that you know, the game is getting a positive reception, so to speak. Um, but yeah, I'll be very curious to see how long it keeps Gary's attention because I definitely wasn't expecting him to say that was the game of the year for him. So I'm very shocked.
Yeah, like it just works, man. I don't know what Blizzard did, man, but it just works because Evolve sounded like a really good concept, and games like remember Brink, like that sounded good back in the day. But like Overwatch, it works. It's just so fun. The core gameplay is just so fun that it's hard to get away from.
Yeah, Blizzard does do that, man. Because right now I'm still obsessed with Heroes of the Storm. That came out last year, and like Gary, like I do like appointment playing, so I make sure like every day I get like at least 1 or 2 matches before I go to sleep or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I
It's
feel
that
you.
Blizzard polish. They just
Yeah,
know what they're doing.
Here's the thing: as someone that's played it a lot, but that's kind of like shied away from playing Overwatch, you know, more recently and stuff. I think it's a fine game. I think it's well built and well designed as far as like being a multiplayer game. But I've always struggled playing that game alone, and that's why, like, I understand why people say it's game of the year material or it's their game of the year and stuff like that. And I think it has a lot to be commended for, especially with the design of the characters and a whole bunch of other stuff, especially in the social, like, you know, aspect of that game. But the reason why I wouldn't put it as like a game of the year for me specifically is because a lot of the games that I enjoy and a lot of the games that I think are like the best of a particular year and stuff are the ones I could play both alone and also with other people. Like I could go into my own shell and play, you know, Uncharted 4 for obvious reasons and stuff. But I could also hop online and play with other people, both in party or even just go solo online playing Uncharted 4 and just enjoy it like that. With Overwatch, I always had a problem like going online alone and just trying to enjoy that game for one reason or another. So I always felt like that wasn't so much of a thing where it's just like, you know, the core design of the game. I always felt like that was like a maybe a problem with the game as far as like, again, it's online community aspect of it, because it could be a little bit difficult to try to play an online game only, or at least an online only game, or an online game that's primarily online with multiplayer and stuff by yourself like that. That's all. Destiny suffers from the same problem. I think the Division also suffers from the same problem. You know, games that are primarily like encouraging you to really be with a group, at least to have like maybe 2 or 3 other people with you in a party chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, any online only game is always enhanced when you have people to play with, like friends and stuff. So I would definitely recommend that if you can. But I mean, with me personally, I still enjoy the game even without, you know, teaming up with people. But it just all depends on the type of gamer you are.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. Understood. So what is the game that you the biggest disappointment then?
Biggest disappointment has to be No Man's Sky. I don't know if I can summarize it better than Carlos did, but I just remember like I played the game for the first hour or so, and I was actually enjoying it at that point, like the whole going off to find the materials you need to fix the ship and stuff. Like I actually quite enjoyed that part of it. But then once I fixed the ship and I flew off the planet and everything, like flying off of the planet was cool. Like that little moment of the first time you fly off the planet, that was cool. But then after that, it's like it just started to go downhill for me. And because like I could see the potential, like the game could have been amazing. It could have been like the be all and end all of gaming, but they dropped the ball. And if a lot of those features that Sean Murray promised were in the game, it could have been a different story. But it wasn't enough. It was too repetitive. Like it's just finding materials, crafting things, and that's it. Like the space battles were really poor, I think. And there should have been building day one, like base building and stuff like that. They could have had a lot of survival elements that you see in a lot of those PC survival games and stuff. They could have did so much to improve the game, but they just dropped the ball. And I actually saw the potential in the game. It's just they didn't realize it, and that's a shame. And then everything happened with them going silent on social media, not letting people know what was going on with the updates and stuff. And then just all of a sudden, out of the blue, they decide to drop the update, and now nobody cares anymore. So
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that when you mentioned that, like, yeah, the first part is pretty cool when you're fixing your ship to get out. And once you get out, you think, okay, this is the first mission. I'm gonna go to like a broader sense of gameplay and world building and stuff. But you're just leaving to go back and do the same thing, essentially.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and one thing that bothered me that's kind of dumb, but you know those sentinels or whatever, I don't know what they're called, those things that shoot you when you're getting too much resources or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, how does every planet have that?
They're
Like, that
actually
just
called Sentinels, which is funny.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's like the generic term to call those things in any game. But like why are they in every planet in the universe?
Yeah, I have no idea, no explanation for that at all.
That just seems like odd to me. Like one thing that I kept fantasizing about is, imagine procedurally generated worlds, but done as a Mass Effect game. Like, that's the game that I would want to play.
Yeah.
It's like having, I know it's kind of super ambitious, but having like all the worlds actually be unique and have their own stories and they do have their own races in this game. But like something that also I didn't see in this game is planets with like really high civilizations. Like, well, at least I never got to that point. Like, I never saw like a planet with a whole bunch of huge ass buildings and stuff and people in it.
Yeah, and colonies and stuff like that. Like, that would have
Yeah.
been cool to come across that stuff. And even the animals were really like uninspiring. Like, they were really basic and boring.
They were like a washed up version of spore creatures.
I think it's a fair comparison. I've seen somebody on Twitter and stuff talk about that in the same vein, like that, where they just, seem like the creatures just seem like a hodgepodge or just an amalgamation of like a bunch of different things. But something, I think, we've all talked about No Man's Sky to death. I think everybody has at this point throughout the entirety of the year, since the game came out. But one of the things I always felt that was like a big shortcoming of No Man's Sky, it's for someone like me that wasn't really so much on the hype train that a lot of other people were on, getting excited for it when we saw it at different events like the Game Awards or E3 and stuff. I always felt that when I finally played it away from all of that and I sat down and really observed what the game was kind of like, presenting to me and stuff, I never found a true sense of progression in that game. Like, it seems weird to say that because, the goal of it is to get to the center of the universe and, to explore different worlds and like, archive them and different things like that. But every time that I would take like a couple steps forward doing different things, the game would always present me with a challenge that just brings me a bunch of steps back. Like, perfect example, and a lot of people highlight this whenever they talk about the game, getting the first time when you get that hyperdrive capability, when you have to go find the antimatter and stuff, or you have to make antimatter in order to make your engine work to jump to the next planet, is like processes like that are just so elongated and so stretched over a long period of time that like by the time you're done with like 15 hours worth of game time, most of it is traveling from point A to point B to go pick up one little thing just to get a small little bit of progression like that. And I found like the game suffered from that, or at least had things like that happen many different times throughout my experience, because I never finished No Man's Sky. There was a point where I was just like, you know what, I'm done. Like I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I don't feel like there's a lot happening. It just seems very boring. A lot of people have said like it's a perfect Twitchers game or Twitch streamers game because you're not really doing much that's important over long periods of time. You could talk to your chat. Like, that's probably the one best thing about No Man's Sky for a lot of people and stuff. But there was, for me personally, it was just never this strong sense of progression going from point A to point B.
Yeah, you should be happy that you didn't play the game till the end, because if you would have got that ending.
Oh, I saw the ending, and I saw Angry Joe ranting about it on YouTube, and justifiably so. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one that felt like that, because if that was the ending to any other game that we know that's like AAA and stuff, people would be livid. People would be really upset and stuff. But again, I think a lot of that was a product of them trying to be artsy and different, and also trying to be mysterious and really ride on the idea of that it's about the journey, not the destination, that I don't think that they really kind of thought, fully about the experience itself to really give people something at the end of that journey.
Yeah.
I have to say that's, aside from most of the Battlefield 1 review, that's probably the only Angry Joe review that like I really agreed with. Was just No Man's Sky and how bad it is. Boring. My God.
Well, they warned you ahead of time. No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
That's
Shake
right.
my head.
The interesting thing is, if this game was, like, let's say for example, it was never overhyped and it only cost like $15, would your mind change about this game?
I honestly think it would a little bit, because
Yeah.
it was really overhyped. Like, we have to be real about that. Like, it was never supposed to be hyped up that much. It just kind of took off after they showed it initially the first time.
You know something? I think we should also acknowledge that a lot of our gripes with the game, not just us, but pretty much the entire industry, are lots of people in the industry that have covered or have played or have really observed No Man's Sky from its first revealing and stuff. A lot of those issues come from everything outside of the game. And I think that the game has its issues and stuff like we've all talked about at this point, talked to death. But I think a lot of it is everything surrounding the game itself, between the hype cycle and the the preview cycle about it from all the different websites and stuff, to all the way down to when Sean Murray was talking about it in a bunch of different places. I think that's where a lot of the ill will about this game comes from, besides what the game itself presents like that.
Yeah, I feel like if it was a $10 to $15 game and none of those things from Sean Murray were promised, people would look at it differently.
It also would have probably never gotten as big. Like a lot of people probably would have never heard about it. That's the thing.
Yeah. Possibly.
Yeah, I think that maybe making this like an early access game, like that would have been better for this, definitely, because they would have at least taken into the criticisms of the game and build upon that. While they promised everything and they couldn't give you half of what they promised.
And one more thing, shout out to Hello Games for probably doing the worst thing that a developer can do when their game comes out. It's not talk to their audience. That they're probably the only developer, the only publisher, I should say, or dev, or whichever one you want to call them, that when stuff was going down, they kept silent. They didn't really say anything. And granted, there's always that point at some cases where you have to kind of take a step back and wait till everybody calms down to like really talk to them. But I felt like that wasn't one of those times when everything was really happening and, word got out about the game. And even when it leaked out early, remember when it leaked out early and when people were playing it and there was all this bad publicity about how the game actually was, 30 hours and it was over and stuff. They never really kind of like sat down and talked to everybody, or at least explain what was going on. And I felt like that was to their huge detriment. And that's probably one of the reasons why you won't ever hear about Hello Games making another game, or at least making another game that's going to get that big ever again. And I think that's a tying lesson to a lot of other publishers, a lot of other devs in the industry, of what not to do when your game comes out.
Shouts to that one dude who sent the drunk tweet about it being a mistake.
Which is a whole other can of worms, but that plays to my point and stuff. It's like, after all that went down, that was the one thing that got Sean Murray and Hello Games tweeting again. And that tells you everything you need to know about what was going down with No Man's Sky. Like, everything was just all over the place. That was a terrible thing. It was a disaster train on PR, on the entire PR surrounding Hello Games and No Man's Sky. Everything about it was just a hodgepodge of bad.
Yeah, come on, Gary. That guy wasn't drunk. He was just speaking from his mind.
Did they ever confirm that's what it was?
They say alcohol brings out the truth, so
Yeah.
No,
They
never confirmed. They never confirmed anything. That's the problem. That's my point.
Yeah.
It's like they did not talk to their audience. They did not talk to everybody. And I feel like a lot of people, not everybody in general, but like a good number of people that were behind them throughout the entire time, throughout that cycle when the game was coming out, they deserve a better explanation than what they got. Or they deserve something better than what they got there. Not just the blog posts talking about the updates and stuff. It should have been Sean Murray going online or on a stream or talking with someone like Jeff Keighley, who I think should have been another person they talked to, or Shuhei on some stream, and talk about what's going on and be honest. Now, again, there's a lot of logistics behind that and stuff, but anything would have been better than nothing.
Yep. Yeah, they just acted like that. All that never happened. Sucks. It's like the Destiny. We still don't know whatever the hell happened during that development with Destiny. with all the supposed cut content and stuff.
Yeah, but at least like with Destiny, even though there's a lot of BS involved in that game, like to some extent, like on some level, they did deliver. Like they
Yep.
did deliver
Yep.
well.
I have 300 hours in that. They did something right.
Oh,
But
yeah.
That was before the expansions, though. I'm done with that game.
Yeah, you're right, Gary. They did deliver something, but it wasn't a story. So that was the expansion. That's what you got in the DLC. Yeah.
Yeah.
They delivered the whole solar system, which basically looks all the same.
Yeah. It's tight. It's arguably one of the best feeling games I've ever played, though. Feels so good. So tight.
Yeah, it's interesting because that game and Overwatch, like there's people asking questions like, why is Call of Duty sales so low? Why is it going down? And it's like Destiny and Overwatch, those games are starting to get the attention of people. And more people, like I would have never believed that a game like Destiny or Overwatch would be so big on consoles.
Yeah.
So
and Battlefield.
And Battlefield too. Yeah.
No, yeah, no kidding. Honestly, and it's also just the variety of games we have coming nowadays, especially with like indie developers now. Like, who wants to play Call of Duty every year? You have all these different games to play now. You know, so you can play a different game every day easily. Like even No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I refuse to play Call of Duty now because there's just so many different games out there now. Like, and if they're not going to change anything up about that game, then I'm not going to waste my time.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing though, because a lot of people are giving this year's Call of Duty a lot of shit and Infinite Warfare. I reviewed it and I still think it's a great game. I mean, they're going through the phase like if it's not broken, don't fix it, and clearly they got stuff that's working with that game. So I think we're being a little bit harsh on that case. You know, granted, past history, Call of Duty has not changed for like the last couple number of years. Like I want to say 4 or 5 years now at this point, if not longer.
Yeah.
Since that series has been being annually released and stuff. But this year's Call of Duty was really good. And a lot of the word is that a lot of people are trying to say that Titanfall 2 was better. And from my understanding, that doesn't seem to really be the case. Now, granted, I didn't play Titanfall 2 like that. I think that maybe people are coming from a mean-spirited place because it's Call of Duty here and there. But I still got to give them credit for doing a good game this year, doing a good single-player experience. You know, granted, you feel however you want to feel about the multiplayer and stuff, but I still feel that Infinite Warfare's campaign was well worth what everybody paid for it.
And actually, sorry, go ahead. I'll go. Yeah, so the past campaigns, like I played pretty much every campaign for Call of Duty except the last two. So I didn't play Infinite Warfare or Black Ops 3. I think that's the one before that. And they've all been quality campaigns. So it's either they're doing something wrong, which I mean, like JJ said, it's the same formula over and over again, or the market is saturated and people aren't looking to Call of Duty anymore. And they even complain, like, which is interesting because there was like a large contingency that was complaining about the space combat. It's like they're trying to do something different, and you're complaining about the game innovating something to the franchise that's never been done before.
Which was one of the best aspects about it, what I said in my review. The Jackal fights, literally one of the best things they added to this New Year's Call of Duty.
I agree with that 100% with the Jackal fights. Yeah, it's fun.
And I do think Call of Duty like does have a place. Like it's just not my thing. I'm not going to play it every year. I haven't since Black Ops 1, I think. But like there are people who just get it every year, and that's just what they like. And like you were saying, JJ, I heard that Infinite Warfare's campaign is awesome. I heard a lot of good things about this year's Call of Duty, and like that is good. And yeah, don't break what works. It's just not for me to personally play every year. I wouldn't hate it if I was given Call of Duty. I just wouldn't play it, or I'm probably not going to spend money on it.
I think the last straw for Gary was putting Jon Snow into the game.
More like Colin McGregor.
Oh God.
Yeah, Conor McGregor. That's right. Okay, Gary. So, you any final things you was gonna say about your bad pick? Or you good to go?
No, I'm good to go. We talked it to death. So
All right, we're good. So now I'm gonna go ahead and and get into mines. The best game. This is a very difficult decision because I enjoyed Inside a lot. I must confess that I absolutely did not finish Inside. That's possibly why it wasn't the because I was very close to finishing, but it's still not where it needs to be at. So that's possibly why it's not my top pick. But without a doubt, and this is a pick that a lot of people may or may not expect, depending on if you heard me talk about it in the past. Without a doubt, I would say my personal best game this year is Oxenfree. And I would like to give a shout out to Mr. Charles Singletary because he is somebody who told me about this game. We have a chance. He had a chance to interview the developers. The interview is on the website. I didn't really know what to expect with this game. I decided that it was a game that came out very early this year, back in January. That's when it came out on Xbox. It came out on PlayStation 4 towards the middle of the year. And, of course, it's also on Linux now as well. But I really didn't know what to expect going into this game, very much like Inside. But what I got was truly something that was interesting. Now, I'm not going to say it's not like any of the other games you guys mentioned where it's a game that you would constantly want to go back to. It's relatively short, maybe a couple of hours, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But the overall concept, the overall of how they put it together, it's just a very unique game. I guess if you want to come up with a way to describe it, it's like a supernatural mystery game. It follows this group of teenagers as they go to an abandoned island. And while they're on that island, they actually have a supernatural event where there's a spirit trying to talk to them. It's an evil ghost, different type of elements that are haunting them as they're on this island. And the thing about the game that's so interesting is that, there's a radio that you get in the game that you actually use as a frequency to communicate with the ghosts. And it does other things. It can be used for puzzles, different stuff like that as you are navigating through the island in different areas. It's very hard to describe really exactly what the game is, but because it is such a great indie title, it's a game that I definitely recommend people try out just to see whether or not it's something that they would enjoy. There are a couple of decisions that you can make that ultimately do impact what happens in the end. And then even still, after you've completed the game, you can go back and play it a second time and make some different decisions that will, again, change the ending to some degree. But the voice acting is phenomenal. The animation, fantastic. It's like a 2.5D perspective type of game. So it's very unique in how it's designed. The studio that made the game, I believe it's, Night School Studio. This is made from a studio that has worked on Telltale games. So these guys, they pretty much know how to put together a great game. And I walked away impressed with it. It's a game that I continue to think about, even though I'm not necessarily playing it every day like an Overwatch. It's a game that you definitely go back and think about it because it's like a coming of age story. And, talking about relationships and how you deal with people overall. So I definitely would say it's a game that I would recommend people should try out. I know the game is on sale right now on PSN. It's a holiday sale. It's probably going to be on sale on Xbox also. So definitely worth checking out. And of course, it's very cheap, like only $20. I believe right now the sale is maybe $8 or $9. So it's worth checking out just to see whether or not it's something you will be into. But if you do like mystery type of games, a little supernatural, something different, it's definitely a game you need to have a look at. But pretty much I would say that is the game I enjoyed most this year. Very difficult to make that decision because I played a ton of games and, there are some honorable mentions I will mention soon. But yeah, that's my top game.
I just checked. It's $10 right now. It's 50% off with gold on Xbox. So that's cool. I might have to pick that up.
All right. So this is what I will say since you mentioned that. Tomorrow is the big sale on Xbox. It's like a holiday sale. It starts the 22nd. It's probably going to be even less than $10 by then, because I also saw that they're also going to have live subscriptions on sale also. That's when I'm going to actually renew my live.
Yeah, for like $1.
Yeah, I saw that. I
should have just waited to renew mine, because I renewed my live not too long ago, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I should have waited.
Hey, well, I mean, I didn't know. Well, I didn't know that they were going to do that, because they normally don't give you they don't normally have any discounts on renewing live on Xbox. So maybe that goes well, depending on how you look at it. Maybe for some people they say, well, this proves that Microsoft is desperate now that they have this service cheap. But I'm not going to go into that. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff. That's people making up little theories. So that's my top game. The most disappointing game, oh boy. I don't want to sound like a broken record, because we just recorded the quarterly reports. There were only a few other things I'll mention about this game, but once again, of every game that I played this year, the game that I was most disappointed from, once again, Mafia 3. And again, the reason why, like I said on the quarterly report, it's a game that had potential to do some great things. I know it has gotten praise from the industry in terms of some of the issues that they have in there. They're very, 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 very straight to the point, and they don't shy away from anything that they show in that game. They have KKK in that game that you can take down. A lot of different racial type of stuff that they try to put in that game. But in terms of what the game has, when you actually start playing it, I mean, it's a game that when I started playing it, from the very beginning, I was like, okay, this is not a bad game. It's okay. It's pretty fun. It's okay. But as you continue to play it and you see the repetitiveness, there's no customization. I actually just got an email about an hour ago saying now we have the option for you to have your character customized and wear different outfits. All that was presented in an update. And I know this generation, I've noticed that a lot of that stuff has happened where developers will release a game, and then after the fact, they'll release additional stuff to add, give it some more flair or firepower or whatever. So that's another thing I didn't like about this game. But again, there's not really anything about the game that's really unique. One thing that I did see when I went to E3, and I recall the presentation that I saw for Mafia 3, they emphasized the map. You look at the map, anybody that looks at that map, if you ever played Grand Theft Auto, you're like, whoa, wow, this map is just as big as Grand Theft Auto. There's probably a ton of things that you can do in this game, just like Grand Theft Auto, but that's not true. Everything is focused on, the revenge story, which I understand. For those that don't understand, the basic story of the game is that the main character comes back after doing his time in Vietnam. His family members, who he considers his family members, it's a black mob family. They get gunned down by an Italian mob family, and then this guy decides, now I'm going to take out every single person and take control of the city. It's the concept sounds like the perfect concept for a game, but the execution of how it's done, that's where they had their flaws with, because it's a lot of different things you do. You see some of the same animations, people getting killed. You do this. You take down this boss. I mean, it's the same repetitive nature of the game throughout. And it's not really quite as satisfying. And the storyline, some of it is confusing. It's done like it's a documentary stylized storyline, which is actually a good idea. But again, the execution is the biggest issue with the game. It still could have been better. And, just to go back to the whole thing about the racial thing, it's emphasized, it's supposed to emphasize race, but the main character is Dominican, like a black Dominican. It's not like a full-on African-American male, but yet they treat the character as if, well, he still is. So, I mean, some of the stuff is a little interesting in the actual game that they tried to do, like when you try to go into a store and it's a colored-only store and they'll tell you you can't get in there, then they call the police. But then stuff like that takes it a step down when you actually go drive in your car. You say you run speed past a police officer or hit a police officer, the AI doesn't even recognize, and it's like, what the hell, so you can do whatever you want to do in the city. So it's like stuff like that it really takes it down a peg. And again, I only put this public service announcement out because I want 2K to make great games. I've noticed that they've diminished in quality with some of these releases they've had. Evolve was a fun game, but there wasn't hardly enough content in that game to keep me busy. WWE 2K17, a great game, an outdated game rather. I had, when they picked up the license for WWE, I figured, well, this is a good thing, but they have not done a good job with that license so far, and that's a shame. But overall, I just wanted to put that public service announcement out there because I feel like a lot of people are really saying Mafia 3 is an amazing game. Nah, man. I mean, maybe to some people it might be, but the game has a lot of issues. And from somebody who also had high expectations for this game, I just feel like you really just can't sit back and not say what's wrong with the game. So that definitely is my most disappointing, I would say, worst game so far this year. That's where it's at. So we're going to now briefly jump into our honorable mentions, because I'm pretty sure you guys have a couple of games you think definitely deserve to. You want to tell people that they should be playing. So, Carlos, how about you go first? Let us know what your honorable mentions are.
Yeah. So, two of my honorable mentions have already been mentioned. I mentioned before that it was between two games to be my favorite game of the year. So it was between Inside and Final Fantasy 15. 15, man, like I was so pessimistic before that game came out because the last one I played was 13, and I hated 13. I hated it so much. I actually liked the combat in the game, the combat system, but everything else was just bland. And yeah, the whole linear going into open world thing just threw me off. But that's another story. But Final Fantasy 15, actually Final Fantasy 15 was going to be my game of the year until I got to the second half of the game, and got to the point where the part that everyone was complaining about. And yeah, there were some things that just threw me off of the game. It got linear, and the story was okay. It wasn't as strong. It didn't finish as strong as I thought it would. But it's still a great game, and yeah, my second favorite game of the year for sure. And it's so deep. It's like you can just be doing side quests for hours upon hours upon hours, and you wouldn't get bored. And that's one of the good things. And it makes fishing kind of fun. I actually kind of like fishing, and it's pretty. The mechanics, the combat system, it's all pretty good. I was actually didn't like the mechanics at first because I kind of didn't know how to play it. It's interesting because, like, for example, you jump into a crowd of enemies, and the crowd of enemies like always used to like knock me out. It's like so fast. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, and I did notice that one of the things that I was doing wrong in the game that I didn't notice till later is that I was using royal arms, and royal arms drain your HP. Like while you're using the like these are like the sacred arms that you're supposed to collect in the game that are like rare, but they drain your HP, and it's so confusing. I don't even know if it tells you, but yeah, that's one of the things that I was doing wrong. And also another game, Uncharted 4, we talked about. It's, man, Naughty Dog's on a roll. Like they've been in a roll since 2007, and it's hard not to never give it the benefit of the doubt whenever they release a game. So the DLC I'm looking forward to. The Last of Us 2 I'm looking forward to. And what else? Oh, Gears of War 4 was pretty good too. One of my main issues with Gears of War 4 was that the campaign, so I only played the campaign. The campaign was a bona fide horde mode, pretty much. Like it's just waves and waves of enemies, and it does have some kind of set pieces. I won't spoil it, but it does have some set pieces. Uncharted 4 has more, so that's kind of what puts it over the top for me, and more like different aspects to the game. And what else did I play this year? Battlefield 1 is really good too. Battlefield 1 is actually kind of surprising, and I played it on PC, and that game looks amazing. Like, from the first second you start playing it, it's just like ridiculous how good it looks. And I actually like the way it does things. So it goes back to World War I, and it has different points in the map where there were different battles that were taking place in World War I, and you get to choose which battles you want to fight, and you follow different characters. So it's not like you're the same character going through different places in World War I. You're going through different places of World War I and different characters and different types of fights. Like you get to do like flight combat, and you get to go through the deserts of Arabia, kind of like the story of Lawrence of Arabia. I don't even remember if it's the same character. I think it is. And yeah, really good game. But that's, for my honorable mentions, that's like the top of the list. There's a couple others. Pokemon Sun I played too, and that's a refreshing game in the franchise. Like, other than them cramming you, I don't know how you guys played the other Pokemon games, but this one, they cram you a lot of the story. They want to tell you a narrative instead of letting you play the game. But other than that, everything else is an upgrade to the previous installments of the game, and I enjoyed that pretty much as well. And yeah, pretty much it for me.
Yeah, great picks all around. Yeah, and very good explanation as to why they weren't quite the top pick. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels kind of like cheating because Inside is a way shorter game, so they have less time to screw up.
That's true. Well, yeah. Well, hey, Oxenfree also is a short game, so I understand the point. It's okay.
Yeah, and I felt like that a couple of years ago when Journey came out. I'm like, I feel like it's cheating giving this Game of the Year because it was so short. It's like I forgot what other games came out the same year, but it's like the other games were like 20-hour experiences. They have more time to screw up, and they were more ambitious, so they have, they can fail at a bigger scale than Journey and stuff like that. But hey, if it's like a really cohesive experience that is worth the price that it was paid, there's no qualms to that.
That's the thing. It's like it probably resonated with you the way it did because it's so short. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It works because it works, I guess.
Right.
It's interesting. That's a good point.
Absolutely. Sounds good. All right, Mr. Lugo, how about you let us know what your honorable mentions are?
So I have one great honorable mention and one bad honorable mention, or disappointing, I should say. The great honorable mention I want to kind of give a shout out to, again, is Pokemon Sun and Moon, believe it or not. And again, it's very hard picking that again because I just talked about that with everybody on the quarterly report recently. But also because, again, there was so many great games that came out this year. It's ridiculous. Again, Final Fantasy 15 we mentioned. I could talk about trying to think of a couple of other ones. Again, there's so many that just came out throughout the entirety of the year. But if I'm really kind of, again, being different a little bit than what everybody else might say, Pokemon Sun and Moon did it for me because having been, like what Chris was talking about, having been someone that's played all the previous Pokemon games, I'm always amazed at how much content and how many things there are to do in those games, every single release. Like, again, they're meaty experiences. They could be 30, 40, 50-plus hour games if you want them to, not just with the narrative experience, going through all the main gyms into the Elite Four and the Pokemon League and stuff. But then you have all the side missions and all completing the Pokedex. You have the online battles that you could do against people, even the tag battles and the free-for-all battles. The list goes on and on. That game, both Pokemon Sun and Moon, and amazingly, we might be getting one on the Nintendo Switch, as called Pokemon Stars, apparently. And again, those games are just meaty. If you like games that are going to keep you busy for a while and you own a 3DS, then I feel like you have to own Pokemon Sun and Moon. Like, I feel like that is a must own on that platform. Now, the game that I feel like is the one that's, an honorable disappointment that I actually kind of want to give a little bit of a shout out to because I didn't want it to be a disappointment. I wanted it to be a really good game when I reviewed it, but unfortunately it didn't turn out that way, was Recore. if you remember, Rich, me and you did a podcast a while back as like a summary or a debriefing podcast where we talked about my review of Recore. And the reason why is because we saw Recore at E3. We saw the announcement. We saw everything about that game leading up to its release. And we were interested in, myself included, because I wanted to play it at E3. And I didn't get to do so because the lines were like way too long at the time. But I was always interested in that game. And when I finally got to review it and play it, I was like, man, this totally did not turn out how I wished it was. And like, it was just such an utter disappointment on the simplest of things too. And I remember reading about all the different stuff around its release from various websites, kind of like echoing my same sentiments. And it was a shame because that game should have been much better than what it actually turned out. But those are my two honorable mentions. There's so many games out of 2016 that you could say are either great or terrible games, stuff, because we had a lot of great releases, more so than bad ones. But again, there's so many to kind of touch on. We wouldn't have enough time.
Absolutely correct. Yep, without question. Okay, Max, how about you? Any honorable mentions?
Got a few. Dark Souls 3, like I said earlier, because it like kind of calls back to the first game's roots and fixes all the mistakes that the second game made. Rocket League released on Xbox One this year, and I was able to start over with the skills that I got from the PC version, so that was pretty cool. So I'm much higher ranked than I was on the PC version. Gears 4 is awesome. But we kind of talked about that. Overwatch also is one of my top 5 games of the year. I don't get it in as much as I'd like to. Like I've never played ranked still even, like, which sucks. And we're on season 3 now. And I remember when it came out, I was going to be like, wow, I'm going to play every season of ranked and everything. And that hasn't happened. I just kind of went into it blind and I just loved the game. It really clicked with me and I love the characters. I just need to play it more. Dishonored 2. Awesome game. Talked about that earlier too. And I guess not much else. It kind of sucks that I didn't get to play a lot of the indie games this year. Like Oxenfree was one I always wanted to play, but never got around to it, or like Firewatch or Hyperlight Drifter. So I guess that would be my disappointments of the year for not disappointed in myself for not being able to play those. But other than that, yeah, 2016 was a pretty great year for games. Honestly, I don't really have much bad to say about it, aside from like the obvious, which we covered already.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Great picks. Okay, Gary, your honorable mentions.
Yeah, definitely Final Fantasy 15. I feel like I've talked about this game a lot today, so I'll keep it brief. But yeah, it's just really refreshing to play, another JRPG on that scale again. It's been a while since we got, a full-on numbered Final Fantasy, so that's great. And I'm still really enjoying it now. I haven't beat the game yet. I'm right near the end, but at the moment I'm in grind mode, and I love grinding in RPGs, so I'm just in my element right now in terms of Final Fantasy 15, and I'm loving it. And also I have to give a nod to Uncharted 4, because even though I had issues with the story and everything and the new character that they introduced, there's no denying that, technically that game is a masterpiece for the PS4. Like they did amazing things with that game that I didn't think were possible on a console. So I definitely have to give a nod to them for that. It is a really good game, gameplay wise. So yeah, that's honorable mention. And as for disappointments, I've definitely got to say Deus Ex Mankind Divided, because I just didn't get that same spark that I did when I first played Human Revolution. Like, that game was really incredible. It was like, to me, it was up there with Mass Effect in terms of the storytelling and the decision making and stuff like that. But this game is just, I don't know, it just feels a bit disconnected. Like, it feels really bland to me. And it's not as gripping as that first game was. So
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, I just want to say, Gary, they once again they warned you ahead of time. The name of the game is Mankind Divided. That meant that you were going to have a couple of different thoughts on the game, whether it be positive or negative. So they did warn you ahead of time.
I mean, it's not even a bad game. I wouldn't say it's a bad game or anything. I do plan on going back to it eventually. It's just yeah, it didn't feel as good as the first game did.
All right.
But yeah, that's it from me.
All right, cool. Yeah, great picks. I agree. So I'll wrap up my honorable mentions. Okay, Forza Horizon 3, without a doubt. Next to Gears of War 4, that's probably the best Xbox One exclusive this year. Some may say it's the only Xbox One exclusive this year, but no, we already talked about Recore, which was not a good game. So,
and Quantum Theory came out this year too, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Quantum Break. Yeah,
I forgot about that. I want to play that game.
That I reviewed that game, and I thought the game was good, but obviously there was some stuff about that game that I was very confused with the story. I cannot lie. Because it got towards the end of the game, they made it seem as though, well, maybe there could be a sequel to the game, but I really don't know. But I thought the game itself was good. I know a lot of people complained about that final boss battle. That was the one thing that a lot of people were like, what the hell is this? But the game was I thought it was a pretty good game. But yeah, Forza, and I say this as someone who is not necessarily a traditional racing game fan, but I have, when Forza Horizon 2 came out, they hooked me. I figured, how can they top this? And then, of course, they come out with Forza Horizon 3. They put you in charge of the festival this time. They had a lot of other things in it that also weren't just about racing, but about exploration, so on and so forth. So I feel that definitely had to be at the top as an honorable mention. Also, another game which we also already spoke about on another show completely. I would say Batman: The Telltale Series, and the reason why I say that again is because I appreciated the different perspective that they had in that game, where you are able to play as Bruce Wayne and not just Batman. Maybe now, as we've already said on the other podcast for that, it wasn't perfect. All right, it wasn't perfect. A lot of things they can fix with the second season, so on and so forth. But what they presented was, I thought, great. I enjoyed it. Whenever you're anticipating the next episode, and you're excited all the way up until that point, you know that they have done a good job with the actual episode. So I have to give Telltale props for that.
Mm-hmm.
Another game I'm going to mention, XCOM 2. And again, this is another thing. Now, I want to give a shout out to Microsoft for Games with Gold, because they made the original XCOM free on Xbox One earlier this year. It was a game that I had, when it first came out a couple of years ago, I got to spend a little bit of time on it, but I didn't really dive deep into it. So once it became free and I had some more time to actually play it, I got hooked on that game. It was very, very addictive. And it was like, wow, this is awesome. So I had to do that. I had to jump into XCOM 2. I'm glad it finally came to consoles, because I don't have a gaming PC, and game is awesome. Now, again, as has already been said on this show, no game is perfect. Every game does have its flaws, one way or another, but I enjoyed this game for what it was. Very much reminded me of the first game. Pretty much was the first game, but they just updated the graphics, changed a couple of different things, and they pushed forward in time, and the story is a bit different. But great game, definitely a game that I would recommend at the top of the list. I'm trying to see, do I have one more? Oh, yes. Dishonored 2. Max wrote an awesome article about this game when he said that it is the perfect sequel. And the thing about it is that, that was what motivated me to play the game. As soon as I started playing the game, I got very deep into the world, just like it drew my attention right away. And, that's another reason well, that's actually the only reason why I haven't played Final Fantasy yet, because I actually want to take my time to play through that game, start to finish, on both, take the stealth approach and then take the violent approach afterwards. And that's what I intend on doing. So once I'm done with that, then I'll jump into Final Fantasy 15. But I would say, without a doubt, all those games at the top of my list. I would say Uncharted 4 also, but I have to be honest, I have not finished Uncharted 4 yet. Yes, I know. I should have finished it by now, but I'll finish it soon. But
I'm in the same boat, man. I'm like 70% completed that game, and then I stopped. I forgot what I was doing, and then I noticed that there was going to be like a PS4 Pro upgrade when the Pro would come out. So I'm like, I'll just wait until it comes out.
Oh man, I thought you finished it already.
No, not yet, man.
All right,
but I know what I'm getting, so I'm like, I can trust Naughty Dog by giving them praise for this game.
Absolutely. That is a nice little treat to go back to. Because at the beginning of the year, I mean, in the first 2 weeks or so, there won't be much else out, not until towards the end of the month. So that's, yeah, I'll definitely spend some time with both of those games. Yeah. I believe. Go ahead.
I'd like to mention like a couple of, because I never did honorable mentions for disappointments. So I got some disappointments. So
what's that?
The Division to me was so disappointing, and I understand a lot of people like this game, but man, to me, the mechanics and everything was pretty good. I just thought that the world was going to be more alive than it was. I guess that's the main thing that disappointed me. I just felt like, man, I have to run everywhere. There's nothing that pops out that surprises me. It's just like the same bland world, and I'm running from point A to point B to do all these missions, and it just didn't really grab me as much as it did other people. Not only that, but it had some issues on the PC. It had a lot of issues. It never ran that great on my PC. And I got a pretty decent PC, so it's like why? But most overrated game. So I don't think anybody had this on their radar. I don't even know if you guys have even played this game, but the most overrated game for me is The Witness. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
You don't like The Witness?
The Witness is like, it's not a bad game. It's actually, it's on my top 10 games of the year, but it's because but it got there by default.
Yeah. Okay.
But the puzzles are good. I just think it's because a lot of people were giving it 9s and 10s and praising it to all hell, and I'm like, it's just a decent game. Like, people were saying it's something revolutionary. The puzzles were, I like the variation in the puzzles, but the way they were presented were all the same. So it was like, is there anything else to this? It's like it's like this huge circuit board of little stations where you solve your little puzzles, right? They're all little squares.
Yeah.
And some of the puzzles were interesting. Some of the puzzles I don't even know how the hell you even found out, because it's like, yeah, this puzzle is just there, right? It's like you have to click somewhere and you have to point and drag it through the end of something, right? And you're like, okay, so what do I do here? And you're lost for like half an hour to an hour, and you just give up, and you're like, I'm gonna Google this. I don't care. So you Google it, and it's like, yeah, you have to look at the rock formations that are on the water. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? This is a puzzle? I didn't. That really turned me off. That's
understandable. To be fair, I have played like 5 hours of it, and I absolutely loved it, and I need to buy it, or I wanted to buy it. So I guess I can't be a perfect judge of that, but
I think I played like maybe 2 or 3 hours of that game.
Okay.
And I think.
Sorry, keep going.
And I think the visuals are overrated as well. I heard a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people were hyping up the visuals. They're like, this world looks beautiful, and I'm like, I mean, I played it in 4K in max settings, and it's just it looks fine.
Yeah.
But there's like nothing special about the visuals.
That's actually funny. Literally during the show, I found a video called "The Witness: A Great Game That You Shouldn't Play." It's like 40 minutes long by this guy Joseph Anderson that I wanted to check out. That's pretty funny. I wonder if he talks about some of the things you're talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And for the I think I'll call this the biggest failure of the year. This was dedicated to No Man's Sky, but we already punched and dragged No Man's Sky into some ditch and threw it there, man. So I'm gonna change it, and this is gonna surprise people. But the biggest failure to me, PSVR. PSVR is so disappointing. So disappointing. I bought it. So I have a PSVR. I bought it day one. And I don't know if you guys know, like in the Throwdown crew, Brett, he's one of the biggest advocates for PSVR. And he hyped it to all hell. Like he played it too. He bought it and he hyped it up and he played it right before I did. PSVR was just not ready to launch. It doesn't have any titles that warrants the purchase of that system. It's a whole bunch of tech demos and rehashes of other games. If you think about it, like some of the games that everyone was telling me to buy, it's like Riggs and Rez and Super Hypercube. Well, Riggs is an arcade shooter, which looks kind of weird. It's an okay game, but it's just one of those quick games that like you'll play once and you just won't go back to it. Super Hypercube is just a bona fide Tetris remake that's 3D. And Rez is also a remake. And they're all like just arcade games. They're not really anything like any AAA. Even like the Batman stuff just looks kind of off, and the Tomb Raider stuff looks kind of off for me as well. And I don't know. I know that they wanted to cut costs for making this more affordable to people, but the screen, that 1080p screen, so close to your eyes, just looks like you can see all the pixels perfectly, and you can count them. Like it just doesn't. It just turns me off, especially since this year I bought a 4K TV. So going from a 4K TV into that 1080p PSVR screen, it's just not a welcoming sight. And this might be, that's the sad thing about this, because Sony did, I thought, the dumbest thing that anybody could do, and that's release hardware in 3 consecutive months. Like, think about it, they did the relaunch of the PS4, which was a PS4 Slim, in September, I think, and the next month the PSVR came out. The month after that, the PS4 Pro came out. So it's like, how many things do you want to sell people, and are you overestimating how many things people can buy? So I just thought that PSVR from launch was set to fail, which is a shame, because at least they tried.
That's interesting. Tony had very similar thoughts in our previous show about VR.
You know, I mean, yeah, I think I did ask that question on the last show. I think we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see what happens next year. Perhaps Resident Evil 7, perhaps some other titles will, you know, I don't know. Now, I didn't get PlayStation VR yet, so.
Hey, I'll sell it to you, man.
Oh no! I'm in no rush to get it either. But, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, I had said earlier on the other show, you know, Resident Evil 7 comes out. I'm getting it. I don't really care about the VR. I just want to play the game. I know people are pushing it as a VR because of the VR functionality, but I just care about the game itself.
We can only hope about Resident Evil 7. I mean, Capcom has had a really bad track record as of late.
Yeah, well,
hopefully they can deliver on this one, because
they absolutely need to deliver. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see about that. So one last thing I want to ask Gary. I have to ask the question: what is your response to what Carlos said about the division? Because you actually love the division.
Yeah, I like here's the thing. I really did enjoy playing that game throughout like while I was playing all the missions and stuff. I forget how many missions there were now, but the main storyline missions and stuff because I also had somebody to play with as well. Like I had two different people that I was playing with. So I did get a lot of fun and enjoyment out of the game, but I do agree that they could have did a lot more with it and the city should have felt a lot more alive. And here's the thing as well, like once I finished all of those missions, there was literally nothing else to do, or I wasn't, compelled enough to do anything else. Like I didn't like the dark zone at all. And so after you beat those missions, it's like, okay, well, there's nothing to really grind for anymore. I don't care about the gear. The gear is not like there's no gear that's like really superior that you can grind your way to get to or anything like that. So it just kind of fell off after that. Like once you beat all the missions, that's it. Like there's nothing more to see.
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier about Final Fantasy 15, how the open world kind of leads you and makes you want to explore. But this one, you don't really want to explore. You just want to look up your map and look where the next mission is, because the missions are actually kind of decent. And like I said, the mechanics are good, but it's just everything else in that game is just so bland. There's no reason why this game needed to be an open world game.
Yeah, I agree. And because they made such a big deal about it being like basically a replica of New York kind of thing, being really accurate, but then they did nothing with that. So
yeah, they had like open portions and they had like a blockade of cars not letting you go into different parts. So it's like, yeah, like they just restricted most of it. They had like fences and like everywhere.
yeah,
And you couldn't even have it. I don't know if they've fixed, like if there's been an update for this, and there probably isn't. But like one thing that kind of threw me off too, I did find a friend to play with in this game, and we couldn't go into this like the same. What's that thing called? It's like the hut where you store things and stuff like that. What do you call that? I don't know. It's like,
you mean the dark zone area? Or?
yeah, it's like you can't go in with your friend. You can just go in by yourself. Yeah, I just found that like pretty like weird. I'm like, why couldn't you do that?
Yeah, though that's weird. I didn't play too much the Dark Zone, to be honest. I think I only tried it on my own, so I didn't really experience going in there with someone. But yeah, that does sound weird.
That's interesting. Yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps our show and our best and worst games of 2016. So do you guys have any final shout outs? How about you go first, Max?
Not much. It was a pretty good show. Enjoyed hearing everyone's thoughts on the year. Always a shout out to the chat, of course. Chat's always fun to be in. Had a lot of people in there today throughout. And happy holidays, everyone. Have a great break, honestly.
Absolutely. How about you, Mr. Lugo? Any final shout outs, final words?
Same thing. Again, thank you for everybody for listening, everybody in the chat, everybody leaves comments on the articles, the posts, our reviews, our podcast, everything. Shout outs to the Patreons for supporting us, giving us the means to keep providing great content for all of you guys, and everybody else that just loves all the games talk that we love posting up for all of you guys. So hopefully you guys have a good holiday season.
Yes, absolutely. How about you, Carlos? Any final shout outs?
Yeah, shout out to you guys for having me. This was really fun. And stick on until January 5th. The Throwdown's back on the 5th. So make sure to watch that. Turn on the new year.
Absolutely looking forward to that. Yes, January 5th. And how about you, Gary? Final shout outs.
Yeah, shouts to all of our supporters, the people on Patreon, and everybody who joined us in the chat. And shouts to all of you guys, man. It's been a great year for us, and I've had a lot of fun. So that's it.
Yeah. Yes, and I also would like to give a shout out to all the fans that continue to support us, the Patreon supporters as well. We obviously would not be where we are at now without you guys' support. So we definitely appreciate that. 2016 was a great year. And, I know there was some ups and downs throughout the year. So just wanted to end off this year. I hope everyone has a happy holiday season, a very, very good new year. If you're going to go out, be safe. Don't do nothing reckless, have fun, but just relax a little bit too. And we'll see you all in 2017. Take care and have a good evening.